Hi, everybody. Welcome to Sunday School Bonanza, your gospel doctrine podcast to get you all happy and great, ready for church. This is a This Week in Mormons production. Please visit us at thisweekinmormons.com. Shoot us an email, contact at that, and all that other stuff. Social media, blah, blah, blah. You've heard this many times. Welcome, everyone. Patricia's here.
Yay!
I'm clapping early. We haven't had Patricia for a while, actually. She was with us during the earlier months of the year, but as is often the case, you know, life gets in the way.
It's so great to be heard by you guys again.
Aha. We have an audience this week, too, so we'd really like to welcome our audience. Thanks for joining us here in the studio, everybody. We hope it's a terrific experience for you. You know, just chat away.
Welcome.
Hop in our chat room. Tell us what's going on. We're going to do a live Reddit after this. It's going to be excellent.
We have live Instagrams going right now.
Live Instagram? Instagram does a feed now, everybody, apparently. Okay, so Less Than 20 is the one we are on. It's called All the City... ... doth know that thou art a virtuous woman.
Why, thank you, Jeff.
So I'm not claiming that the city knows that about you, but I believe it's true.
Okay.
I think you have a good rep. Your reputation precedes you.
Yes.
In a good way.
Thank
Absolutely.
You.
Patricia was one of the first people I met in D.C., actually. In the early days, yeah. I met you pretty early.
Yeah, at Institute.
Back when I went to the Toot, as they used to call it in my native California.
Don't call it that.
That was their branding problem. They said, everyone come to the Toot. And I said, I'm not coming now because you said that very thing. But in more uplifting matters, I think there's a good lesson this week. Really good stuff. We're talking all about primarily Naomi, Ruth, Hannah. So we're being Ruth and then in the first handful of chapters of Samuel. And there's some really good lessons here of all of these women of faith.
Yeah, and they talk about... before the show, Jeff and I were talking about how I really like these verses because they're talking about relationships between women and the loyalty and strength and the relationship that forms between them. And I really enjoyed reading the lesson. I know you will too.
Yeah, or listen. Yeah, it's really good. And by the way, if you do the attention activity, it's outstanding. Basically, they just want you to write down a few words, how you would like to be described. I guess it's easy to scoff at that, but if you are actually feeling pensive, it might be a good exercise in self-evaluation to actually consider how you would want to be regarded. You know, if people had to write your epitaph, what would they say? Right.
And then I think it moves you to action because it says, what can you do this week that can help you come closer to matching that description?
And that's a fair point, yeah.
Because a lot of the good things about Ruth is that... both Ruth and Naomi, is that they were known by their actions, not just by being virtuous, but by acting virtuously. And one of the things that Boaz noticed about Ruth is that she was a really hard worker.
Oh, you are jumping so far ahead. Spoiler alert.
I just felt inspired.
It's okay. But for some backtracking, why don't you explain to us, Patricia, who is Naomi, who is Ruth? What's the relationship here? Why are we discussing these women?
So Naomi is an Israelite or from the house of Judah, and she goes to Moab to live with her husband, and she has a couple sons. Her sons get married to Moabites, Orpah and Ruth. And eventually things go terribly wrong. It really doesn't discuss this, but her husband dies and her son dies, or both of her sons dies, so it's just the women are left together. And Naomi's like, I'm going to go back to live with the Israelites. Orpah, Ruth, go back to your families. You don't have to come with me. They both kind of protested, but Orpah ended up staying back, and then Ruth ended up going with Naomi back to the land of Judah.
I see so many interesting things here. One that I love is that you actually see people being adopted into the Abrahamic covenant at this early time, and it's something that we so easily stress in these latter days, you know, as far as lineage goes, or even after Pentecost and stuff in the New Testament, you know, taking the gospel to the Gentiles. But early on, the Moabites were not Israelites. They did not invade Canaan. They did not escape Egypt. That wasn't their blood. That wasn't their history. But you could still convert and actually be adopted in. And we see that the love that Naomi had and the concern that she had for these women, saying, like, it's great that you're a part of our family, but won't you potentially be more at home and better off with your own people, knowing their customs, their ways. It's great that you've converted to the gospel. And Orpah's okay with that, and there's no there's no problem with that or anything like that. But yeah, Ruth tags along. She joins Naomi out of her love. And I really see Ruth taking great steps of faith in this sense. Because as far as I know in her life, she's never visited Judah. I mean, as far as I know, she's spent her whole life in the Moab area. And think about that. I mean, I see a lot of parallels with old Mormon pioneers, especially the ones who came from abroad. You know, imagine if you were a convert to the church in Italy back in like the mid 1800s or something like that, and they say, well, saddle up, make your way out to Missouri or something like that. Totally different world. But it's all a matter of the faith. And Ruth had a great deal of faith, and she went on and did even more wondrous things, as you alluded to before.
And now, of course, when people are baptized in the church, they aren't expected to move to Utah, but they are expected to leave a lot of cultural traditions behind.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Keep the rich traditions that they have, but then, it's really adopting a new way of life, and that does take sacrifice.
Yeah, it reminds me of I think of those classic remarks from President Hinckley. You know, when he said every new convert needs a friend, a responsibility, and nurturing from the Word of God. And I see that's from a prophet who gave those remarks back in the late 90s, maybe it was early 2000 or so. And we go way back in time to Ruth, and the same exact thing applied. Because Ruth did not rest on her laurels. She was involved with her people and her community. She was in good standing. She gleaned, and for what that means is she actually basically you just pick up whatever was left over from the harvest that wasn't caught during the initial harvest, right? And Boaz allowed them to do that because he was just a nice guy.
It was a tradition for people who were poor to glean the fields after they were harvested.
But I just love it. I love how impressed Boaz is with Ruth. He sees that she's a woman of strong character, that she's upstanding. He shows great kindness to her, too. He's very generous with her. But then we see that Naomi kind of starts playing matchmaker, make me a match.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
I mean, we could all use a little Naomi in our lives.
Could we? The meddling mother-in-law?
Yeah.
So what is she? I think the custom here is so fascinating. She basically says, hey, Boaz is going to be asleep. Go and wash his feet and wait for him. And that's the equivalent of proposing to the guy.
Right. I mean, I don't think she's washing his feet, but she's
maybe
sleeping
not washing.
Sleeping at his feet. Yeah.
And so what happens?
Well, basically that's a pretty bold move. She's basically proposing to him, and when he wakes up, she asks that he spread thy skirt over thine handmaid, which means take me under your care. And so, as was custom, Boaz agreed to marry her if the nearest relative didn't wish to, because that was the custom. If your husband dies, it becomes the responsibility of his nearest relative to marry you and take care of you. So once they made those inquiries, and they said it was okay for them to marry, they eventually got married, had a son, and out of that son eventually came King David, and then later on Jesus Christ. Yeah, it's
a pretty interesting line. And it says a lot about, I think, Boaz's character, his patience in the situation. Because easily, if you're in Judah, Ruth has effectively walked away from her homeland. It could have been very easy just to up and get married. I don't think they probably wouldn't have really had many issues, or anything like that. But maybe they would have some issues, but you know what I mean. But instead, they went to those lengths. Even Ruth said, yes, I will marry you, but we need to make sure this is okay with my family lineage first, basically, and that we're not, in effect, dissing any of my old family members, the old in-laws, the old brother, whoever else is supposed to have first pick, for lack of a better expression. The top seed.
The draft.
If you will. Yeah. So
the marriage draft.
The number 1 seed passed it along to old Boaz, number 2, second round. But they get married, and like you said, the descendancy is pretty amazing, honestly. It's pretty cool what came out of that. And I also love to think, I know I talked about it before, just the racial undertones of all of that, to really realize that even King David was not someone who was 100% ethnically Israelite in that sense. And you see how wonderful it is that people could be adopted in through the Abrahamic covenant with their faith.
I think my favorite part of that story is to see how one woman deals with her life when things go drastically differently than she thought it would. Just the fact that, she's married, she has these sons, she thinks everything's settled, she's moved to a new place, and then suddenly all the men in her life die, and she's responsible for taking care of her and her daughter-in-law, and they really have to rely on each other to get through it. And I think they do pretty well. So even though her life didn't turn out the way she thought it would, she really rolled with it, worked hard, and found a way to take care of themselves.
Yeah, big time. Well, now we're going to move on to Hannah. And I like the story of Hannah as well. I think Hannah is fascinating. You know, we've gone forth a couple of years at this point, a couple of generations, actually. So Hannah was a widow. No, she wasn't a widow. She was
wife of Elkanah.
And never able to conceive, as is a common tale, it seems, in the Old Testament. And so what did she pray for?
Well, not only what did she pray for, but where did she pray
for
good
point.
She really wanted a child. And, you know, not only was that important because children are great, but also it was a big symbol. It was a big symbol of their commitment to God and of their willingness. And basically all they had was their posterity. And so it was important for her to have a line. And so the place that she went to was the tabernacle at the temple. And she's praying there. She must be getting pretty into this prayer because Eli, who's a priest, sees her, and she's so into the prayer that he thinks that she's a little drunk.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever been drunk on prayer, Jeff?
Can't say. I don't think it's gone that far before.
No.
No matter how maybe caught up in the spirit I might have been, I don't believe I would be to that level.
Yeah, Hannah was pretty into it. And she promised the Lord that if she was blessed with a son, that she would commit him to the Lord's service.
Okay. Interesting.
So what did the Lord have to say about that, Jeff?
The Lord effectively complies and gives her a son. And that's fascinating. I don't know how, he was young at whatever point. He was still a couple of years old. And there's a great video by this. Your teacher might have you watch it. It's a little dated as far as church productions go, but it's good and it illustrates the point. And she comes back. And I love that, of course, she's spoken with Eli before. And she comes back and says basically to Eli, like, maybe you remember me, you might not remember me, but we spoke here before about this. And I promised the Lord that if he gave me a son, I would let the Lord borrow him, more or less. And from that point on, it's almost like she let Eli become Samuel's ward, basically, and sort of take Eli. And if I'm sorry, take Samuel. Did I say Samuel become Eli's?
Yeah.
Eli becomes Samuel's ward. My mistake. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe Samuel also made Nazirite vows similar to Samson, which is interesting if you compare the two and the courses they took in their lives, because Samson eventually crumpled down and caved to temptation and beguilement, whereas Samuel, if you read the Old Testament, he's one of the rock stars of the whole thing. He is unyielding in how diligent and obedient he is throughout every chapter that involves him. I mean, he rebuffs Saul. He just soldiers on all the time and doesn't even have to get touched. But that's another lesson for another time. But I love this, and I love that Hannah had enough faith to simply say, I'm so delighted to have a son. And she probably had him for a couple of years, as he at least, as far as we know. Usually we depict him being, maybe like 3 or something like that. But then she willingly gave him up to the Lord, which is fascinating. And I don't know. What do you take from that?
Well, I think, again, it's another story of a woman whose life isn't turning out the way she wanted to.
Yeah.
She wanted for a long time to be a mother, and that blessing wasn't coming to her. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, who want to have a family and because they can't get married or because they aren't able to get pregnant, really struggle with this. And I think that we can learn a lot from her about taking our troubles to the Lord and then not forgetting our promises that we've made when the Lord blesses us.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to note that not only was she blessed with Samuel, but because of her faithfulness later on, she was blessed with children. And, I don't think the Lord always answers our prayers this directly. Like, I really want a son, give me a son. And then you're blessed with a son. But I think that Heavenly Father does make us promises. And if we remain faithful, then we will be blessed. If not in that way, in other ways.
And I love the gratitude that she shows. It's not, even up to the moment when she parts ways with Samuel, she doesn't sit there in a bittersweet sense, despair or anything like that. I guess the closest thing I can think of at this point would be, a mom dropping her child off to serve a mission or something like that. Happy that it's going on, but at the same time, a little bit sad. And I like there's a quote here from Elaine S. Dalton, who you might remember used to serve in some of the women's boards of the church. And she says, it's interesting to note that Hannah's story begins with a cry of distress and sorrow to the Lord and ends with a song of praise and thanksgiving to the Lord. We do not always have the option of choosing our situations in life, but we can respond with faith and trust in the Savior. We can know that he knows and loves us and will be with us. He has promised us in the Doctrine and Covenants, you cannot bear all things, nevertheless be of good cheer, for I will lead you along. The kingdom is yours, and the blessings thereof are yours, and the riches of eternity are yours. We can also know that when we exercise our faith, the Lord's purposes will be accomplished in his own way and in his own timing, and in the end, everything will work out for our good. We can play a part in blessing future generations by exercising our faith in the Lord as we move forward through trials. I miss her. She's no longer a part of the team. It's very sad.
But she's a part of the team in our hearts.
Well said, Patricia. Well said. I think on that bombshell, I think we can go out. But unless you have anything else.
No.
You're good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. You're already playing on your phone, so obviously you're done. What, are you guys taking pictures of each other?
We're Snapchatting.
Danielle, this is serious. Sorry if we ruined your Sabbath, everyone, by the silly frivolities of these ladies, but I trust it's going to be okay. We hope you'll take the time to study this lesson, but if not, we hope this podcast is useful for you, absolutely. And let us know how we're doing. Once again, shoot us an email or find us on social media. We are everywhere, and we definitely appreciate your feedback. We try to make the show as effective as possible as we can for you guys. Patricia, thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
Wonderful to have you back. Once again, everybody, this is lesson number 20. It's called All the City Doth Know That Thou Art a Virtuous Woman. And so a good reminder to stick to our covenants, stick to what we know, keep our faith, and keep a positive outlook on things. And this has been Sunday School Bonanza, brought to you by This Week in Mormons. Wish